Hello and welcome to Football 301. I'm your host, Nate Tice. We are continuing our prospect series today for the 2025 NFL Draft. Receivers. This is it. This is not the penultimate. This is the ultimate prospect series today because the person joining me to do it, this is his fastball. He's going to crank this back. I mean, I've been hyping him up as this, at least privately, as like, I don't know, Nolan Ryan of receiver prospect talk. I'm very excited today to do this with Matt Harmon. How you doing today, Matt? It's been a while. It's been a few weeks. I was letting you rest, go back into your fantasy world, and then we're going to bring you back rearing to go. So how you doing today, Matt? I'm very excited.
I'm doing great, Nate. Yeah, I appreciate the I don't even know what to call it. Like kind of an encouraged vacation-ish or except it wasn't any time off at all. It was actually just hours and hours spent in route prison. I think it was a little, mostly it was route prison, baby. That's where I live. But no, it was good to take the time. And I mean, it was also on my end to say like, hey, Nate wants to know, like, when do we want to do the receiver preview? I'm like, as late as possible so that I can get my eyeballs on as many prospects as possible.
I texted you like a month ago because I was like, oh, shit, I should probably start planning this out. And texted you and was like, hey, I had receivers, quarterbacks to start off. And then I was like, actually, he watches like 8 games on each guy. And I want to talk about a lot of players. So this might take a minute. Hey, how far along are you? And you're like, I need a couple days.
Yeah,
I need a couple weeks.
I'm going to need some weeks.
And I was like, yeah, me too, actually, because I would only be able to talk about 5 guys right now, like as deep as I want to. So yeah, I'm very excited to do this, though. We're going to be talking wide receivers, one of the glory positions. I feel like this is a great way to cap off this preview series after we did quarterbacks last week with Dane Brugler. We've done the line, we've done defense with Charles McDonald. But this is pretty fun, even though this was a class I think painted as a down year at the receiver position, yada yada yada. I actually think this is going to be a fun, interesting, deep class because that's how receiver is, at least to me, from college prospects getting into the NFL. But we're going to go over the consensus top 100 players from the Athletics consensus board, which is nice. They compile everybody's mock drafts and big boards, put them all together, and then we get to see what they spit out. We're going to go in that order, and then Matt and I will give our thoughts on each player. Matt, of course, does a lot of great work with reception perception, and I mean, I've read a couple of these profiles, but I didn't want to spoil a few because I was like, all right, but I did have to ask you a few things about it, so I'm very, very excited to pick your brain today. But I just want to get your overall feelings of this class. I didn't want to speak maybe for both of us that I think that there is some depth, like there's going to be, I think, for a while on day 2 at the receiver position. But what were your overall feelings with this receiver class, Matt?
Yeah, I'm excited because you and I haven't spoken about prospects basically since the combine. And there have been a few guys that I've wanted to like text you about, but I'm like, save it for the show. Like I want to get the organic sort of reaction. And yeah, again, there's a lot of things I kind of want to cross check with you here, but I think the overall vibe of the class is like, we certainly do not have the top of the line guys that we did last year. I think there's just like that's a universally accepted reality. And to me, I'm with that. Like to me, the way I view receivers, and like I have a stacked board on receptionperception.com where I look at kind of from 2021 to current and kind of put the guys from this year's class into that group. I think a tier 1 receiver prospect is this guy can go in the top 10 of any draft. Not like I'm not saying this draft, any draft, they'd be a top 10 type of pick and they'd be like a ready-made starter, if not ready-made star in the NFL. I think we only have one of those prospects this year, and he also might not play the position, which I know we will get into here in a second. The rest of the guys, I don't think fit into that group, but I think there's a lot of what I would say are like tier 3 to 4 players, which are kind of guys you could take in the late first round. There's guys that you could take like that I really like as day 2 prospects as well. And then I think there's also 2 that fit into tier 2 to me, which is you could take them in the first round of basically any draft. So we'll get into all of it, but I do think it's a class that I kind of came into with, the expectation that it wasn't going to be like last year. I don't think it's like last year. But again, I found a lot of guys that pique my interest, maybe if not even just in day 2, like maybe early in day 3. I think it's an interesting class overall.
Yeah, I do too. And even the ones that are at consensus, there's some that are outside the top 100 that I actually are going to have on my updated big board this week. Charles and I will have our top 75s this week. And yeah, a couple new names for me and some that aren't on that consensus board. And that's what I think is awesome about this receiver class. A lot of fun flavors, a lot of interesting flavors. That's why you have to tier these guys and go like, well, this is better for this team. This is better for this team, which I think it turns into a fun exercise as we talk about them, because you can kind of see some ideal fits. A little different than maybe a couple years ago, the JSN Addison class, where that class wasn't very big, very small. And I think that's what's cool about this class is you got some speedy guys, but then you got some size, some X's. If you can't tell, I'm excited about that. And also just different stacks of all this. So like you just talked about, maybe not that true blue chips like last year, where I think everybody consensus unanimous that there's 3 true blue chippers, Roman Dunze, Malik Neighbors, and Marvin Harrison Jr., and then Brian Thomas Jr. right below that. But then these guys, it's more just a lot of what I call green chips and yellow chips, which I really like them. They're good prospects that could ascend, but I just think there's a lot of good starters, which kind of emulates this entire draft, really. Like I feel like the receiver class kind of emulates this whole draft. A lot of good players that are more late first round, day 2 types, as opposed to maybe like, oh yeah, easy top 10 in a class. So thank you for that breakdown. But let's start off with that guy that actually kind of seems like might be going number 2 to the Cleveland Browns. And actually, Andrew Berry, their general manager, has said that this player, he sees him as a receiver first. So I see you getting maybe a little excited there, Matt. That is Travis Hunter from Colorado. Maybe you can continue to talk about him on reception perception as he ascends into the next level. We talked about him as a defensive back, as a corner last week with Charles McDonald, talking about all the defensive back 7 players, but we're talking about him as a receiver today. He is my number 1 overall player on my big board. I view him more as a primary corner. They play 12 to 15 plays on offense, just mental load, all that. He's the consensus number 2 player on the big board. But Matt, I know you're bullish on Travis Hunter as a receiver. I've seen the reception perception graph. I think it's going to be painted on walls across fantasy players throughout the globe. But please speak to Travis Hunter, the wide receiver from Colorado, and why you're probably so bullish on him.
Yeah, first of all, just because I haven't spoken about this with you, I think it's crazy that everybody doesn't have him as the consensus number 1 overall prospect, because our buddy Ben Solak made this point today on Twitter that if he goes 2nd overall in the draft, he'll be the highest drafted wide receiver, if he's a wide receiver, the highest drafted wide receiver since Calvin Johnson in 2007. Obviously, Calvin Johnson, like a Hall of Famer. And if he's drafted as a cornerback and he plays cornerback, he'll be the highest drafted cornerback ever. Like, and he could potentially be he is a great prospect at both positions.
Yes.
Like, so again, the fact that he's the consensus 2nd overall prospect on the consensus board is nutso to me. Like, we use the term generational, like seemingly every draft class, and 95% of the time it's bad. This is actually a generational player. This is actually a once in a lifetime player. And part of the reason that is the case is because I think he is a fantastic wide receiver prospect. Like, he is not necessarily as, carved from stone as Marvin Harrison was to be a day 1 starter. And like, look, everybody's kind of a little bit disappointed in Marvin Harrison's rookie season, only because he was so hyped up. He was so highly drafted in fantasy, but let's not forget the fact that this guy played and started every single game as the Cardinals' X receiver. And it was obvious that he was going to be able to handle those duties, even if he didn't execute it to the highest degree, or at least maybe to the degree you might want. That was still present. He was able to do that. With Hunter, he's probably a little bit more of a projection for a variety of different reasons that we can get into, but athletically, he is unbelievable. He's so flexible. I thought his press coverage release package was extremely, not just proficient, but also pretty detailed for a guy that is, I don't even want to say he's minoring at the wide receiver position, because he doesn't even go to offensive meetings. He's primarily a defensive player at Colorado, and he's just out there doing stuff as a wideout. But 97th percentile success rate versus press coverage and reception perception among Power 5 prospects. His zone coverage success rate trails only Calvin Ridley. His, again, that 84.4% success rate versus press is the best among any prospect that I've had, with 22% of his routes coming against press. He separates extremely easily. He has rare rare catching ability. And by the way, like the first guy never brings him down in the open field. I made the prime Odell Beckham comparison to you guys at the combine. I still stand on that as just what he is as a wide receiver. I like him a lot. I was a big Rome Odunze fan in the class last year. I think I like him better than Odunze. I just think he has such an incredibly high ceiling, does Travis Hunter. Like if he truly focuses at the wide receiver position, I don't think there's like a limit on what he could be as a wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, even talking about him as a corner, I kind of started even hinting at why I liked him as a receiver is because what you mentioned, he's a special athlete. He's the top of the bar as an athlete, top of the range. Randy Moss is always my S tier, top of my class, top of my barometer for when I'm judging athletes. Travis Hunter is a tiny Randy Moss. that's the best way I can describe it, which is, what Randy Moss was described as by Bobby Bowden, because he originally went to Florida State before he got kicked off, was Bobby Bowden said, well, Deion Sanders is the top of my bar for athleticism, and Randy Moss is a big Deion Sanders. So
wow, there we go.
By this math,
tissue here.
I didn't even think of that point until as I was talking right now. So yeah, by this math, I basically call him Deion, which is crazy. But as a receiver, I totally agree with you. He's really unguardable at the college level because of like his bendiness and how fluid he is as an athlete and explosive. The ball in his hands, like the receiver screens have never been more dangerous in college than Colorado's offense last year. It was just because not only just Hunter, but the other guys too. But Hunter was he's special with the ball in his hands. Like his feel, his ability to accelerate through holes, to find holes with the ball in his hands. Like that is that's what you need right now. It was the conundrum I got into last year. You brought Rome Odunze. I had Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze graded exactly the same, and I could not figure out who I preferred. Because I was like, man, Rome Odunze is just all this stuff that I like. Does a little bit of everything. But like the name of the game is how you create explosive plays. And Neighbors had that in spades. And you saw what he was like as a rookie. And that's what you look at Hunter and you're just like, man, this is the type of guy you want right now. Because yes, I'll get into my biggest negative with him, but it's an explainable negative. Is that he is so raw as a route runner. He has no idea what he's doing. Sometimes he will step one step on his brake and then just kind of stop his route. I am willing to, usually that is damning. And I'm like, oh, I don't want this guy. That's the Kadarius Toney, not this guy, because I can explain that. Just like you mentioned, he barely is in offensive meetings. He's playing both ways in college. He has to go to school, quote unquote, but he does. Like that's part of his stuff too. At the NFL level, that's why some of the split in the field stuff is going to be, it's more theory and more of an idea, and you have to spoon feed it. And the team that drafts him has to figure it out. But he's just special of an athlete, and he has star power. So I totally get the Browns taking him at 2, no matter what position they want to play him at, because I just think his upside, no matter what, is just so crazy as a needle moving player. Though I'll get into my one big negative, is that the player weight stuff, which is always going to bring up. You'll hear me talk about it all the time. But this is, again, explainable. He played both ways, played 100 plus plays every week in college football. Get him in the NFL playing 60 snaps-ish, 60 to 70 snaps. Hopefully you can just gain 5 pounds. And that'd be much more explainable. But this is just as one cutoff stat I found. But players taken in the first 2 rounds since 1990, there's only been 5 that are below 190 pounds at receiver that have made the Pro Bowl, and 2 made the All-Pro team. And one of them is a great comparison for Travis Hunter and how he moves. The 2 All-Pros, Marvin Harrison Sr. and Chad Ochocinco. Travis Hunter and Chad Ochocinco move a lot alike. Go back and watch. That is how I see him as a receiver at the NFL level. Odell Beckham is a great comparison as well. But that takes some time because those guys were pristine route runners. But if you look at corner, at sub 190 pounds since 1990, 23 of them have made the Pro Bowl compared to 5 for receiver, and 8 have made the All-Pro team. Sauce Gardner, Kyle Fuller, Darius Slay, Stephon Gilmore, Samurai Roll, that's a great throwback name, Sam Madison, Ashley Ambrose, and Eric Davis. So that, again, the players are getting a little smaller now, so this is a little more fungible, I think, in today's day and age. I think he'll gain weight. Again, it's explainable. Just had to bring up a negative. I just had to, because he is such a cool prospect, and I love him. That's why he's my easy number 1 player, and I agree with you. I think he should be the unanimous number 1 player, not just the consensus number 2 player, which is kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, and by the way, like I hear your points about the route running. The thing is, like with any sort of reception perception stuff, if it's not like a guy in the freaking SEC, I always get responses with like, well, level of competition, all this stuff, and like, by the way, as you say, I chart 8 games. If you think I haven't charted some SEC prospects against some goofball defenses, like you got another thing coming. Like, trust me, there you got to get to 8 games. There's not 8 quality defenses in the SEC, so get that out of the way. Like the SEC honks
only goes so far.
Yeah, the SEC honks are all over me this time of year, and I I get it, but at the same time, it is worth noting that playing in the Big 12, like there's definitely some loose defenses on there, so that's for sure. But at the same time, even though he is a little maybe loosey-goosey with the route running and the fundamentals at times, he has a great sense of like zone coverage, especially, like I said. Now, he definitely will, dice guys up in man coverage, and he's not like, I know he's getting a lot of flack after the pro days, like a TikTok route runner. Shut up. This guy's not running TikTok routes during the game. It's a pro day. Learn ball, people. Give me a friggin' break. So I love him. I'm a big fan. From a success rate versus man standpoint, he does profile a lot as like Devontae Smith and Chris Olave. Like, again, those guys were the route runners, like the technicians. This guy's not that yet, but give him some time playing wide receiver, and I think he could be there. So yeah, he's, to me, this is the only spot I will like go to bat and argue receiver rankings, is that I think they should start with Travis Hunter. Then we kind of get into sort of a big cluster of debate and like, what's your flavor sort of deal.
Yeah, he's kind of his own thing. It's just a special talent. He's worth all the hype. Like, that's what I've kind of come to. Yeah. It's just like, yeah. And just like you mentioned the feel for zone, this is where I'll leave it at, is that the rough route running and all that, maybe, it's just so many plays and there's so much hours you can expend. I think he's a football genius though. And that's why I'm like bullish.
Loves football.
Hell, he's a genius at the game. And that's why it's like, that's why even my concerns, I'm like, I'll wave everything away because I've seen this guy play and just tangibly affect the game. And so that's why, and it shows up a lot on scramble drills, is you see him and how he finds space and everything. It's like those little indicators. I'm like, God, this guy just gets it. So I don't think this is bullish or, breaking news to anybody, but Travis Hunter is very good at football. that's what we're kind of leaving this at. And we'll start with there. But let's get on to a guy that was if we're just going to receivers, guys that don't have a second position here, we're going to go on to the guy that's been kind of my number one receiver throughout this process, and I'm excited to talk more about him with you, is Tetairoa McMillan, T-Mac, not Tet McMillan. He prefers not Tet, so I've realized that. I feel bad about it. So Mr. McMillan, though, consensus number 7 overall player on the Athletics big board. He is number 3 on my last big board, and I am holding steady when I update that this week. Spoilers. But Matt, I'm excited to talk about this player with you. What are your thoughts on, I almost said Tet McMillan, on T-Mac and what he brings to the table? Because I hope it's glowing.
Hey, Tet's a good nickname. I think he should be a little more open to Tet. Just nice, simple, quick. It works well. I'm a big fan of T-Mac. He's a just classic X receiver, but not somebody that I think should be like a static X or somebody that's pigeonholed there, because I really like how he works in the intermediate area of the field, especially on in breakers. Actually, the route where he stood out the most to me in terms of his ability to separate, and like, let's get that out of the way. This guy is not some lack of separation stiff player. Just general rule for the people out there, because every year not every year, but every now and again we get some guy that's a big receiver that people think they can't separate. Your Drake Londons, your Rome Odunze's, your T-Mac this year, Tetairoa McMillan. If the guy can't separate on tape, nobody's talking about him as a round one player or a top half of round one player. We'll get to guys that I think probably that actually do struggle to separate at some point. Those guys are not going to, they're not going to go in the top half of the first round. So I think he can get open, but the route where it stood out the most to me was his ability to get open on comeback routes. 88.9% success rate on comebacks. He sinks his hips so well against man coverage. Smart against zone, again, working over the middle of the field. In terms of his long speed, obviously I don't think that's the strength of his game. He's not somebody that's going to threaten you from a separation standpoint on like straight up go routes, but he can and has created chunk plays in the like intermediate area and in like deep in breakers, things like that. So it's not as if he's not going to be a vertical presence in the wide receiver room, and he's really going to make downfield plays as a ball winner. Now, I think he's a little bit overrated as a contested catch receiver. I think he's more great than elite, but we're splitting hairs here. Again, overall, I like him. If we throw out Travis Hunter, he is my next highest rated wide receiver.
Oh, that actually just makes me feel better. Just because this is a confusing player for my some evaluation. I'm just like I feel like there's some disconnect with him. Actually, I'm glad you brought up the separation stuff because that is QB dependent. It is. It just the timing of when the ball gets there and when it's thrown that matters for that. It matters what routes you're going on. I just think McMillan. I'm glad you brought up the versatility stuff. This is how I stack receivers and how I value receivers. A guy that I think can win as an X, but also has slot versatility. That's the highest type of archetype to me. So, and I think McMillan, even if I do consider him a very good prospect, a guy that I think I stand by this, what I said a month or two ago, where I consider him closer to those top 3 guys from last year than maybe what we're talking about this year, is because I see him as an X. I see him as a ball winner, but I see him as fluid, and how he gets in and out of routes is really cool to watch. And you don't really see that from a guy that's legitimately 6'4". Not, oh, he's big and it's like he's 6'1" and change. It's like actually 6'4", actually has a basketball background, actually has a volleyball background, which you see. His hand-eye coordination I really like. I agree with you. It's not, I would say the contested catch, all that kind of stuff isn't elite, but very good. And he plays big, which is good too. I do not think he is soft or plays small. I also have no concerns with his speed because I think his acceleration and body control and his agility are able to get the kind of simple yards after the catch while also being able to have some of that build-up speed to pull away. I know there's been so much discussion about his 40 time, and say he ran a 4.52 or a 4.55, somewhere in that range. That's kind of what I've chalked it up as at 219, 6'4". A guy just got paid like $30 million a year to play receiver named T. Higgins, who's the exact same height at 260 pounds. He ran a 4.59 at his pro day. So running a middle-ish 40 does not damn you. And there's another player that was 220 plus pounds that maybe a little more dominant coming out, named Josh Gordon. He ran a 4.55 40. So like that Gordon was a little bit more physical strength and all that. McMillan's a little more fluid, but still, it's not the end all be all. If you're 220 and you could run a certain speed, you are fine, especially if you show it on scale. But I just really like his hands. He plays like a big guy. I have no concerns with his effort. I think some of the situation there was interesting at Arizona. He was playing with Noah Fafita, the quarterback, who he is close with. That's why he went to Arizona. McMillan was a big recruit. Ends up going to Arizona kind of with some of his high school teammates. A lot of plays ended up as scramble drills at Arizona. And I think that wears on a receiver when you're running another route and you got to go to another scramble drill. And you run another route, and you got to run to another scramble drill. And over and over and over and over. Fafita led FBS last year in throwaways, nearly 40 throwaways. I think he had 38. And I think, and again, we were talking, I just complimented him. It was so obnoxious watching that operation. And just watching, I felt for McMillan. I had no concerns with his effort. I actually was surprised that was a takeaway for some people because I thought he was just, I never saw it. Maybe once or twice at the end of the season, but that was like after like 3 scramble drills. So I don't know. I just think this is a real deal, number one, because I just like so much what he brings to the table because he actually shows it. None of it is just an idea or true projection. Like he is showing that he plays big and coming down with the ball. And I think he's a good route runner already with some branches already. Well, you brought up the comeback routes. Yeah. That's hard for a big guy. Those be able to run full speed and then sink and then come out of your route. Those are tough on big guys. So the fact that he shows it, that's why I'm so bullish on him. I'm so excited about him. But yeah, I where do you think he ends up going? Because I kind of liked him with the Cowboys at 12. And I've been, someone said this to me. It was like, you see him as a top 10 talent? I go, yeah. They go, where is he going to top 10? I'm like, oh, good point.
Yeah.
And so,
well, I think he could go in the top 10. Like, I think it's possible that maybe a team like Carolina, if they just don't love the defensive players that are available to them, I think that they really need, they need like one more guy in that receiver room. And I think it ideally should be an X because I think Xavier Legette's a good idea, but I don't think he's an X receiver. In fact, they tried to kick him to X in the middle of last year, which was a bad idea, and it didn't work out well for him down the stretch last year. So I think there's a chance to go top 10. To me, I think he's probably more like top 20. You know, it's certain mocks. I think we've seen him slip to like the Chargers or something like that. I think that's that's probably too aggressive, although he would definitely fit well in that Los Angeles Chargers wide receiver room. I think he belongs, like, to me, I think he belongs in the family of wide receivers that Michael Thomas, Drake London, Michael Pittman, Cortland Sutton belong to. Like, I think these are all X receivers, but don't have, like, Pittman, for a great example, doesn't play all of the snaps at X. Neither does Drake London, but they're all better separators than you think. I think he belongs more kind of in that Pittman Sutton zone, where I think Michael Thomas and London are like true number one receivers. Every single snap, you build the whole passing game out of them, and they could be like your number one wideout. I think McMillan, Sutton, Pittman are probably like, you can get away with having them as your number one. You probably want them as like a really, really great number two. But to me, I think that's still like it should be a top 20 draft pick.
Yeah, it's a guy that can take a healthy share of your target share. Is like that of the pie, I should say. Is like,
yeah, like I said, Sutton was the number one receiver for the Broncos last year. Their offense exceeded every expectation. They got a rookie going, and like, again, I think McMillan could be that type of guy. Just again, I think in an ideal world, which nobody's living in an ideal world 100% of the time.
Never.
Ideal world, that's your number two wide receiver, but you can get away with having him as your number one.
Yeah, I'm a little more bullish than that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think this guy has top 10 potential. Like, I really do.
Ooh, I like it.
I do. The long speed stuff is stuff I always just try and figure out. It's just that he does so much well that's why I just think he impacts the game, and he's going to rack up touchdowns because I see it. Like, again, it's not he did it once and I'm really extrapolating from there. It's like, no, I watch this guy making plays in and out of the game. And also, I brought up the whole scramble drill stuff. It applies to him. His feel for space, coming down on routes, stopping and starting. Like, those are kind of great indicators of like other stuff he can do. So I somewhere, even if he ends up somewhere between us, like, I really, yes, that's easily justifiable as a top 15, top 20 guy. Going on to the last guy that's kind of really been a riser, I would say, not only just last season, but after season two. And that's Matthew Golden from Texas. He's 23rd on the consensus board, 21st on my last big board, probably going to hang around the same area. Golden, though, was a transfer from Houston, kind of was getting his feet wet throughout the season, and then just blew up in the second half of the year, starting with a Kentucky game. That was kind of the second half of the year. I kind of rewatched that one because I was watching the corner. Hairston and Golden put him in the torture rack.
Yeah,
when you watch it, it was rough. Yeah, I was like, all right, Hairston's still getting talked as a first rounder, really, after this. But Matthew Golden, though, I'm very curious what you think about him, and I'm excited to talk to you about him because I liked him, but I just think he's a particular type of player. But Matthew Golden also ran a 4.29 at the combine. I also should start off with that. Even if some of the film doesn't show that, he still is able to run a sub 4.3 40, which is notable. But Matthew Golden, Matt Harmon, what'd you think of him?
Yeah, whether he's just fast or 4.29 fast, who cares? Like, he's fast and he's a vertical receiver, I think. Yeah, this is, and far be it from me to sit here and woe is us, me and you, Nate. But this is, when we talk about any of these, and really I think T-Mac fits into this group too, but when we talk about any of like the non-hunter receivers in this class, and Golden is certainly one of them, this is where it's difficult to rank these guys when we're not thinking about them for a specific team, because when he's been paired with the Dallas Cowboys, I think that fit makes a lot of sense for what they need, which is, and he's kind of similar to like Jordan Addison in this way, because this is how I felt about Addison coming into that 2023 draft. And I do think there are some parallels between that draft and this draft overall, in that, like, if you're looking for a number two, like, this is the class for you. If you're looking for a running mate to a great alpha receiver, this is the class for you, which is like, that's exactly what Jordan Addison got to do and will always get to do as long as he puts the purple and gold on, or purple and gold, right? If we're talking Vikings, as long as purple and yellow, I don't know.
Purple and gold.
Purple and gold.
No.
Purple and gold certainly sounds better.
Yeah.
Purple and gold certainly sounds better than purple and yellow. Anyways, I was really rolling there, and then I blew it. As long as he gets to wear a Vikings uniform, he gets to be the number two receiver across from one of the best wideouts in the world. And I think Golden would get to do that with Dallas, and I think that's like the ideal deployment for him, because like, he's not the best man beater in the world. He's certainly kind of like average against press coverage to me, but excellent against zone coverage. He is really good in the intermediate area and the deep portion of the field. So to me, when I watched him, I thought, man, if you are and charted him for reception perception, number one, if we're looking at like who he compares to from like a success rate versus man coverage perspective, he's kind of in the same prospect score as like Tank Dell or Xavier Worthy, guys that were smaller, faster, but better route runners than you think. And, you know, I did think that he would fit really well in an offense that emphasizes in breaking routes. You know, I thought, man, these McVay coaches that are using all the motion pre-snap at the snap and just working these big in breakers, he would fit perfectly in an attack like that. And I can see the Cowboys being that type of offense for him.
How about the Texans? Yeah. Opposite Nico Collins. I know that's a little later in the draft, but that's kind of like his range, you know, from early teens to mid 20s seems like Golden's range. I think that, well, number one, Nico Collins is like, again, he is one of the best receivers in the world. He's actually a top. Yeah. Football 301 favorite.
Football 301 favorite, Nico Collins. So he definitely fits into that bucket. I just think Nico's so vertically he should be, and I think he can win everywhere. But I think that there's a little like vertical to vertical kind of work with him, whereas like that Cowboys parent said, like, man, he's gonna nobody loves to hear this for the first round draft pick, 12th overall, whatever, but he's gonna open up so much for CeeDee Lamb because he's gonna take those like those vertical routes and things like that and just clear out that middle of the field for like,
you're being
and
realistic, I don't think about him.
Yeah, I don't think Golden is great in like on quick routes, slants, flats, and like I think he builds up speed and then can snap guys off. And that's where his routes are really, really impactful. So to me, I don't want him running a bunch of like quick game stuff. And I think the Texans, because of their likely problems in pass protection and the fact that they already have an ace quick game and vertical guy, I kind of want somebody for the Texans to be a little bit more of like a layup provider. And I don't think Golden's that. So this is the exercise I think you have to do with all these prospects is like, where do they fit within a receiver room? Because you don't have like, we have Malik Neighbors and we can drop him into the Giants Garbo offense and build the whole plane out of him and feed him 170 balls. We don't have those prospects. So we have guys like Golden that we're talking about with this.
No, I think you have him like just, typecasted perfectly. You know, I'm in full agreement with you. Like, he is a perfect number 2 in today's age. And I even wrote, like, my first note on him is, think he could be a dang good number 2 for a team, what Addison's role is in Minnesota or Devontae Smith is in Philadelphia. You know, like that is just a guy that is a 2A, you know, however you want to put it, but a guy that just really you can design plays for. He's comfortable with everything you ask him to do. I agree with you. Some of the underneath routes too, he can kind of alligator arm it a little bit when he goes over the middle. You know, he plays. I guess I don't want to sound like I'm damning him. I like him. He plays small underneath, and that's he plays like 191 when he plays underneath. But as the play expands, I loved your point about the build-up routes, because even that clip I even tweeted it today about against Hairston, he's running a stop route, and you see some of the subtleties he's got in his route running. It's really nice where he's kind of throttling up and down. He's just an easy athlete, like easy body control and easy speed and acceleration. And really, this is not a one-to-one player comparison, but his route running as far as when it goes down the field reminds me of DJ Moore. The thing is, though, DJ Moore is 25 pounds bigger and you know, and also much better, I think, underneath. But there's some similarities as route runners, like just as far as how they throttle, how they move a little bit. Even when they get the ball in their hands, they kind of move down the field on digs and stuff similarly. But no, I think we're in total agreement that he's not scheme proof to me, which is what you're kind of getting at. That his landing spot matters. And that's where I'm totally agree with you, that there's better spots for him. I actually like the Cowboys pairing more, as you just explained it, and now I've marinated on it. I like that more than I thought, because they need someone to create space. And just like, I agree with you that you don't want to hear that about the number 12 pick, but that is what he can do as well. And it's not just like MVS create space. It's a guy that, no, he's a tangible threat that can do the other routes as well. Like, it's just that he is a valid deep threat as well, which is you need it in today's age. Like, you do. These defenses are clamping on everything. So it's the same kind of explosive play argument that we were talking about, you know, with other players already in this class. So yeah, fun player. He's attending the draft as well. which should tip you off.
I mean, he has been told he is gonna go high. He is gonna go high. I also don't want to. I want to give him some credit as like one of the better contested catch receivers in this class too. He's got, like you said, on those short passes, he can alligator arm, and he's actually got. He's one of the weird high, at least in my charting, high drop rate, high contested catch. So it's just like drops the gimmies, makes the hard ones. But again, I think that only increases sort of what we're talking about here. If you're going to be a vertical wide receiver, it's great that you can get open down the field and you got the speed to burn and all that, but we need you to be a finisher. And I think Golden is a finisher at the catch point.
A receiver is still part of your job description. Also, you mentioned it, some of the underlying metrics aren't warm to him. There's got to be something with that Texas offense, though. Like there's something that deflates the numbers.
God almighty. I can't. I liked watching the offense. I knew this was red meat for you, so
I knew this was red meat, so I couldn't help myself. I was going to go to break, and I was like, wait, hold on.
Bro, I could not believe it that after last year, after all, not only did it like I spent all the time charting A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy back to back, which I'll never do that to myself again. But like there was a guy, Jordan Whittington, that I didn't even look at, and it was like, dang, I wish I had gotten a profile up on Jordan Whittington because he's like kind of an interesting little sleeper, especially coming into his second season. And now there's 2 Texas receivers again this year. I mean, come on, enough already. What are we doing?
It's an interesting offense to watch. Sark does a good job. The quarterback. Dane still likes him, and I was just like, you see me going like, well, I have Riley Leonard, so glass house is here. We can't be throwing stones about our quarterback loves. No, we are going to take our first break, and we'll come back with some more receiver prospects in the consensus top 100. All right, we are back with the receiver prospects. Moving on down the consensus board. We did a little mixing and matching, which I'll explain in a second. But this guy is 28th on the consensus board from Ohio State. Of course, there's a receiver prospect from Ohio State. Just get used to it. This is Emeka Egbuka. I freaking love Emeka Egbuka. I'll just start with that. This guy is like, couldn't be more for me at the receiver position. But I'm curious, though, what you think of Emeka Egbuka, who has played with some very talented receivers there at Ohio State and is now being looked at as kind of I would say, a consensus first rounder at this point. But what did you think of Egbuka, Matt?
Nate, I also freaking love Emeka Egbuka. He is the other guy.
He's better than Jalen Polk, I swear.
Yes. Souped up Jalen Polk, just what everybody wants to hear. No, yeah, I actually think he to me is the other tier 2 prospect in this class. Like I said, it goes Hunter as a tier 1. I think T-Mac is a tier 2. Egbuka to me is a tier 2, which again to me is like you can take in the first round of any draft. Now and then everybody else to me is like tier 3, tier 4, et cetera, onward and onward. So there's a separation to me and to him to the guys like Golden and some of the other players we're going to get to, because I think his game is just so clean. And like number one, the immediate pushback you get from folks is, well, he's always been a number 2 at Ohio State. He's probably going to be a number 2 in the NFL. Yo, you guys see what receivers are getting? Like who's hitting the open market right now? Okay, right. Teams are willingly, not being forced, not coerced to. They are willingly paying like De'Ami Brown and Josh Palmer $10 million a year. Tutu Atwell got $10 million a year. Like good receivers don't get to the open market. Number two receivers don't even get to the open market. The best receiver in the open market this year who wasn't, past his prime was like Chris Goddard, and he barely got to the market because he just went right back to Tampa Bay. So, I mean, you want a good number 2 receiver, you're probably going to have to draft him, and you might have to quote like overdraft what you think for like a number 2 receiver. And Egbuka to me is just, again, I think he's so clean, easy projection to every single team, great zone beater. His success rate versus zone coverage actually would have led all prospects from last class, this storied class that we talk about with Harrison and Dunze and Neighbors and all these guys. He's as good of a zone beater as any of those guys. Now he's not the same man coverage player that those guys are. He's not even the same man coverage player that the guy he's often compared to, because they went to the same school and he's a slot heavy guy, Jackson Smith-Njigba. I thought he was a better man coverage route runner than Egbuka is, but I also think while JSN is the flashier receiver, I think Egbuka is the better dirty work guy. He's got great hands. He's tough. He's rugged. He'll block. Again, just would be useful to basically any wide receiver room. Now I think he would be maximized on one of these teams that can use a power slot. like, I think in a best case scenario, this guy can be Amon-Ra St. Brown. And it's so funny, all the traits that people ding prospects on, like, oh, he's not that effective down the field. He's a slot only guy. He's more reliable than flashy. That is number 14 for the Detroit Lions, who is one of the most productive receivers in the league. So again, St. Brown would not be maximized like he is on every team in the NFL. Who cares? He plays for the Detroit Lions. And I think if a team sees Egbuka in this fashion like I do, and they can use him in that way, I think he can be an incredibly productive player in the NFL.
He is, if we're not including Travis Hunter, he's my number 2 guy after McMillan, but I have him kind of close to Golden because I'm with you, is that he, to me, is an ideal number 2 and a little different flavor than Golden, where I think Egbuka is going to give you, like you had just mentioned, the dirty work stuff, the auxiliary stuff, the usefulness that I just really like about him. He played more in the, I always thought like the slot was one of those things that he just did in a pinch while other guys got healthy. And it's like, oh God, you played in the slot a ton in your career. Yeah. So I started having to look more what he did on the outside. Cause again, I don't want that to just be an idea. I want to just make sure that there's proof in the pudding. Plays he was aligned on the outside, he averaged almost 3 yards per route run in 2024, 2.97. 2.78 yards per route run from 2022 to 2024. So the last 3 years. In 2022, where he was aligned outside the most in his college career when he was a primary player, he had 117 routes from the outside. He had 3.43 yards per route run. So those are promising numbers. There's no kind of red alert where I'm like, oh God, you're not that good from here. And that's what the eye test kind of showed as well. It's kind of hard with Ohio State because all the stuff they do works. So you kind of just really have to see that it matches what I was seeing on film. But I just like these types of players, these Z slot, inside, outside versatile, that is a valid blocker. He's over 200 pounds. He's so smart. You can tell this guy's a smart player too. And that's why I like him too. He's a winning football player. If you have a number 1, a true number 1, you drop this guy in and you love it. Like, this is exactly what you want. And just a little, my fun little anecdote about him, like not only just that he pops that he's such a smart player, is that I tweeted a play about him blocking because he pancakes some corner. I want to say from Illinois, but I could be wrong. But he pancakes some guy, and his high school coach came into my replies, and it was just like, he's like one of my favorite players ever. Watch this clip of him playing DB. I never coached him up. He just knew how to do this. And I thought that was really cool that his high school coach was like, yeah, I love him so much. Like, here, let me find this clip. And I was like, okay, cool. And it was like him making like a pick 6. And he's like, he never worked at that. Like, we never told him to do that. He just paid attention to everybody else and he knew what to do. And I was like, thank you for the tidbit, because that's how he plays. He's just a football player playing receiver, but he has juice. He has athleticism. I actually thought he's shown more receiver juice this year, maybe because he was more, Jeremiah Smith was the dude, let's be honest, but that he showed more playmaking ability than maybe he showed in the past. So yeah, I'm a big fan. Anyone drafts him, I go, yep, I totally get why, because these types of players stick in the league for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I so like safe. Safe is like is overdone.
I know it's hard.
Safe is an overdone word, but I really just think there's a high floor for him. And it's good that you brought up like the coaching love and all that stuff, because everybody you talk to, there's definitely some mixed character reports in this class at the receiver position. Even not everybody loves McMillan that I've talked to. Just right. And then we're going to get somebody who's definitely not for everybody type, but like everyone raves about Egbuka and Golden. And I think there's a reason that those guys have been, especially obviously Golden has been like big media risers because of that.
Yeah, I totally get it. And you mentioned too, it's like how much receiver 2s are getting paid. Teams need more than one valid receiver. Like even the Vikings went out and drafted a guy because they realized, oh, we have a limitation. The Cowboys have kind of gone through this too with CeeDee Lamb. Okay, yeah, we can move him around, but then defenses are so smart and going like, all right, we'll run cover 2 against you here. All right, we'll double team you here. How you punish that is you need more valid weapons. And so surplus isn't just at quarterback. You can get a lot of surplus at a lot of other positions if you hit on these guys. So I just want to kind of continue that point that you made. This is, okay, moving down the consensus board, but actually we kind of skipped over this guy, but this is kind of because I wanted to put emphasis on why. That is Luther Burden III from Mizzou. He is 18th on the consensus board, last updated a few weeks ago, I should mention. 34th on my last big board, probably hover around the same when I updated this week. I'm actually curious to hear what you think about Luther Burden III, but he had, I would say, a fun player, explosive stuff, a lot of kind of highlight reel type of plays. It kind of did a lot in that Mizzou offense. And there's good reasons for that, and I think maybe some bad reasons for that, but I don't want to spoil it. But Matt Harmon, what'd you think of Luther Burden, who was very high on a lot of people's boards before the season, has maybe tapered off a few?
Yeah, really interesting player. I think he's the ultimate grade to the flashes guy in this class. If like you are grading to flashes, I think you're going to really love Luther Burden because he does flash real deal receiver ability. Obviously in that Mizzou offense, he was fed a lot of Mickey Mouse production, screens, just nonsensical stuff underneath. He was a almost pure slot player in the games I charted. He took 82.9% of his sample snaps from the slot. He was in the backfield for 6.3%. He was off the line of scrimmage for 81.7%. So that is pretty. We're in that Mickey Mouse territory with these numbers, but I don't see him as like a Wan'Dale Robinson type. Who's whenever I'm talking about like fake receivers, Mickey Mouse, I always go to Wan'Dale, and I'm sorry, it's disrespectful, but it is what it is.
Wan'Dale should be beat for you because you use it like a slur.
Yeah, I know. I really should.
He's like a Wan'Dale Robinson. Beep.
But you know what? Hey, Wan'Dale's making himself a career in the NFL. He was on pace for 100 receptions at some point. Now it was like 6 yards per catch, but it was 100 receptions at one point. But yeah, there's a guy like that in every class. I don't think Burden is strictly that player because he does show you some man coverage ability. 71.2% success rate versus man for him. And again, it's a lot of slot receiver stuff, and he's really good on these routes where he can gain leverage and snap to the outside. The right quarterback, like if he can build that trust and chemistry, if it's a quarterback who can attack outside the numbers, is really going to make good use of Luther Burden. But I thought he was kind of like just okay as a zone coverage receiver. He was a guy that I mentioned, like there are some real mixed character reports with him. And I normally don't bring that into my reporting at all in terms of like the grades and stuff like that. But the problem is I do think you see some like not great stuff all the time on film. And I think that impacts actually some of his reception perception results. But again, if you're grading the flashes, I think you can squint at him and see kind of like a Bud Light Malik Neighbors type because he is really good after the catch, and he's bigger than you think. He's more powerful than you think. He's more explosive than you think. And I also think he tracks the ball and adjusts in flight at the catch point really well. That's where it's like, okay, Wan'Dale Robinson ain't making that catch, and there's plenty of those plenty of those Neighbors-ish style catches on Burden's tape. But again, I don't think he is consistent. I think that there is some concerns in terms of like the down to down play for him. But overall, I do think he's probably, again, Travis Hunter, like if we're including Travis Hunter, he'd be my receiver 4. Without him, he'd be like my receiver 3, because I think if you're betting on the upside, you could hit pretty big on this. And even if he doesn't hit that high end of his range of outcomes, he is still really good and useful in the run after catch game.
Yeah, he's explosive as all get out. And that's what I like how you say great to the flash, because that's what you're chasing with him is those highs. And it's just that, man, it's these types of players are just buyer beware. Some red flags are waving pretty brightly and pretty highly with him. I'm not going to say a full on that I smell Kadarius Toney, but there's just some stuff here that I'm like, okay, I will say, I'll start with the negatives, is that I do see some inconsistencies with the stuff. And when the guy gets moved around a lot, gets put in the slot a lot, that to me is like, okay, we're telling you exactly what to do, as opposed to you can understand what the flow of the offense is. And when I heard the same kind of character whispers, I would say, and some of it tracked too, was that the combine, if you look at his GPS numbers, you can look per route, what route everybody ran, how fast. And it's like, okay, certain routes, there he is. Burden's one of the top guys. And other routes, there he is at the very bottom. And one of the things was that some scouts complained about was that he was kind of dogging it during the combine. And it's like, whew, that's a job interview, man. If there's one time for an hour, when you're on the field, or I know it's longer than an hour, for a few hours when you're on the field, like let's give it your all. And I don't know, those types of players, that's concerning because it shows up on the field. Like if a guy plays hard and plays tough, okay, fine, I'll sliding scale. But it's again, you're chasing those designer plays, those slot plays, I've seen the flashes. Like even going back to last year, he had a couple plays where he's on the outside. I agree with you on the ball skills. That's funny you brought up the neighbor stuff. That makes a lot of sense why you're saying that. Like he can adjust to it. He can do some crazy hand-eye coordination where he comes down with it. I agree. He's bigger than you would think. He looks like he moves like he's 185 and he's 205. Like he's a thick dude. But yeah, there's just inconsistencies. And when a guy is so heavily designed on his touches, I'm just always sniffing, just to make sure why that's happening. So like he is a guy that if you're chasing the talent, I like him like in the early second and everything, but it's one of those where I just be like, hey, whoever takes him, just make sure you know what you're kind of getting. So don't want to totally damn him because there are some cool plays with him. And I agree with you. He's not full on Wan'Dale Robinson. It's just that there is some caveat emptor with him a little bit. And also he played with some poor quarterback play this year too. Brady Cook is one of the most disappointing players in FBS, I would say, because I actually liked his 2023 film. So maybe double checking it was the same player. That was not fun. Not a fun offense to watch this year. No. And not a fun bit of film for Luther Burden. But yeah, I do want to hold out a little bit of a candle that he can figure it out, but that's going to come up to him. And that's going to come down to him and come down to the effort and everything. And that's just something we are not going to be able to know. Yeah. All right. We're moving on to the first of an Iowa State's receivers. This is Jayden Higgins, who is outside the top 50 on the consensus board, but is 56 on the consensus board. I just missed my top 50, but he will be in my top 75. I can guarantee that. Higgins, big bodied receiver. This is a X, but which also might be a discussion point, so I don't want to spoil anything. 6'4", 214 pounds, long arms, 33-inch arms, ran a 4.47 at the combine, 39-inch vert, 10.8 broad. My little stats for you. He only had 2 drops last year, 1.6% drop rate, and he ranked 9th in FBS in explosive receptions per route. But Matt, when you watch Jayden Higgins, what were some of your thoughts? I'm actually very curious because his reception perception profile had some red on it, which draws some eyeballs, I think. So what'd you think of him, Matt? Yeah, this is the guy I've been most excited to talk to you about, and actually the guy I've been trying to avoid talk with, texting you about or anything like that, because people like him a lot and seemingly are a lot higher than me on him. And I'll kind of get into the reasons why, but I want to start with some of the positives of his game. Cause he's a player I like. It's just, again, relative to where other people are with him. Like, I think he's going to come down to me as like a good day 2 pick, I think is where I would have him. But not a guy like, I got to get this guy in the second round or like early second round or anything like that. Just a good day 2 receiver. And again, I'll kind of get into that. But some of the positives with him, you mentioned he's a big receiver. He's like 6'4", just shy of 2, he's like 214. I thought he felt bigger than that when watching him. Yeah. And it's probably because he has a freaking 91st percentile wingspan. He didn't drop any passes in the games that I charted, the 8 games I charted. He's got great hands when we're just like working underneath. He's a good contested catch receiver, but I think he needs to extend those arms more. I'm like, dude, you got a 91st percentile wingspan. I don't need to be seeing a right angle from you. I want those things out. Like, let's get those arms out. So that's like one little minor nitpick, but I thought he was solid against zone coverage, especially working underneath routes and things of that nature. He draws a lot of PI flags because he's so big, and he can, just an absurd amount of PI flags. I don't have the numbers or anything. I don't know if you do, but it was striking every single game. It's like multiple PI flags down the field because he's so big and he can like get on top of you with long strides and things of that nature. But you mentioned it. Not a great separator. Man coverage, not great. Sub 35th percentile success rate versus man and press coverage. Receiver, guys that fit into that bucket. I did a whole breakdown on YouTube on my channel about this last year, especially when looking at Keon Coleman's profile from last year's class. And I kind of feel very similar to him as I do with Keon Coleman. And you and I have talked about this on this show before. I think this type of receiver, you can line them up at X and they can be ball winners and they can be tight coverage targets and things like that. But if you're going to maximize this type, and again, this is the whole breakdown I did on YouTube last year. Yeah. These guys that are sub 35th percentile success rate versus man and press players, the guys that go on to be high volume players in the NFL, they're all big slots. They're all power slots. And that's what I'd like to see Higgins do. And this is where it's hard again. Like if he goes to a team and gets
moved into be basically like, I mean, one of the biggest jumbo slots in the league, I'm going to look like a jackass with that, all bunch of red route chart getting, memed on the internet. But yeah, I think that in that role that he was in last year as Iowa State's X receiver, I don't think that translates to the league in terms of like a high volume player. But I do think if you move him inside, he can be like a really, really quality player that you can get a lot of layup production out of. So to me, I like him. I just want to see him moved inside to be maximized. And I think that is possible. It's just it's going to take the right coaching staff.
I've chuckled throughout the entire breakdown because it's literally my notes. It's literally the exact. I feel
like I'm crazy, dude. I felt like I'm crazy.
Line up as a power slot is one of my notes. One of my top notes. Has upside as an X, but has limitations. Think he needs to be moved around. Doesn't always play to his speed. I think his ability at the catch point, while there are nice plays, is inconsistent. And that's what worries me. When you have a big guy that doesn't always play big, that's always just going to get me, because then it's like, this is how you have to win, dude. And then you're showing at college you can't win that way. Yes, some guys figure it out, but it's just like, you're already asking him to do something he already doesn't do consistently. So there's sometimes where he falls away from the ball, and that kind of, go up and get it. And yes, he has good hands, but again, it was more underneath stuff. And I think too, was like the slot stuff is that even though he's big and physical, press gives him issues because he's a little stiffer. He can't really bend with the when DB gets their hand on him, corner gets their hand on him, he can't bend around it. Like, so he can kind of just get stonewalled. And that's why power slot makes sense. You're off ball, you get to move a little bit, you're inside, so guys can't press you as consistently. That would make a lot of sense for his kind of player profile. So I'm with you. I liked him, but I saw him as a guy I'm more comfortable late round 2, early round 3. Shockingly, spoilers, we'll talk about another Iowa State receiver in a little bit, Jalen Noel. And I actually prefer Noel more than Higgins, which if you told me the player profiles going in, I prefer the big X that can maybe move inside. But it's like, I watch these guys, and that's why I'm glad I did. It's just that there's something missing with Higgins for me. And again, like him, he can maybe be, I don't know, like you said, the power slot. That's actually a great idea. I was like, if he is an X, it's like the Gallup tier, of X as opposed to, but I don't know, Gallup was more fluid, I think, than Higgins is. And I do like him. I think there is a role for him, but I'm with you that I already had a lot of these thoughts. And so I saw your player profile on him. I was like, oh, okay. I'm not totally crazy. So yes, safe space to talk about him. So the word I kept coming back to is he gets stuck a lot. Stuck at the top of a break, stuck against press, stuck coming out of a break, and again, big guys that do that, those are the ones that the quote unquote separation concerns should actually be the discussion about. So kind of glad that kind of came to the same conclusion through different means though. So I mean, it's just, he's an interesting player. I mean, I like him a lot, but just there are some flaws to him that I think they're just a little concerning for me.
Yeah. Same.
Oh man, but at least his size, as opposed to, that's concerning, and he's also 5'9", 180.
Let's again. I think Keon Coleman's a great example for him, because the Bills, the Bills used Keon Coleman the exact way I wouldn't have used Keon Coleman last year, but it wasn't like, oh man, we're playing Keon Coleman, like this is embarrassing, or anything like that. It was just, he's gonna, in that role, I think he's gonna be like a 5 target a game player, and more of just like a true ball winner. But I think Keon Coleman's a better contested catch receiver than Jayden Higgins. So it's just,
I know. Isn't it funny too? It's like, oh yeah, he's big and he doesn't drop anything, and you expect, oh, this guy dunks on everybody. It's like, well,
that 90-degree angle. I don't need that anymore.
The DK Metcalf. That's what that is. Yeah. But moving on to our last guy before we hit a break, and that's Jack Bech from TCU, a Senior Bowl player, was consensus 66th player on the Athletic Consensus Board. Did not make my top 50 or my last updated. Or maybe top 75. We'll see. We got some other guys I'm more bullish on. We'll talk about them in a sec. But Jack Bech, I truly have no idea what you think about Jack Bech, though. I'm very curious what you think of him, Matt, because I thought he was a fun watch, a fine watch. He has some qualities to him, but there's some flaws as well. So what do you think of Bech?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I think he's a great second round receiver in this class, is Jack Bech. Now he's not the cleanest prospect evaluation because he's played at multiple schools, yada yada. But man, he is the first guy to come up with this that I should bring up. With receivers that I've charted, and this is like obviously many classes now. This is 2016, 17, 18, and then 2021 to current. If you're a receiver who lines up the vast majority of your snaps on one side of the field, like 70% plus, and there's a tweet out there about this, but like it's a long list of a lot of busts and just guys that haven't worked out in the league. I'll just read off some of the names here. These are players, again, that I've charted that are taking over 70% of their snaps on one side of the field. Kevin White, Corey Coleman, Josh Doxson, Dorial Green Beckham, Kenny Lawler, Kieris Garrett, Laquan Treadwell, the other Michael Thomas, not Ohio State Michael Thomas, Southern Miss Michael Thomas, Roger Lewis, Juju Smith-Schuster, Dede Westbrook, Chad Hansen, Adarius Stewart, Taywan Taylor, Ishmael Zamora, what a name, Josh Reynolds, DJ Moore, James Washington, De'Ami Brown, Tylan Wallace, Drake London, David Bell, Danny Gray, Cedric Tillman, Rashee Rice, Charlie Jones, Quentin Johnston, and then last year, 3 guys, Javon Baker, Devontae Walker, and Brendan Rice. So I would say that there's some interesting, like Josh Reynolds, decent little role player. Cedric Tillman, we'll see. But to me, there's only 4 high-quality starters on that list. It's Juju Smith-Schuster, it's DJ Moore, it's Drake London, and it's Rashee Rice. All of those guys are, number one, like DJ Moore took a minute to kind of catch on as a route runner, but now he's good, really good quality starting receiver. Juju's a power slot. Rashee Rice is a power slot, kind of gadgety guy. And Drake London moves around the formation. So like we don't have any just pure perimeter receivers. And the reason I think this is a red flag is because, think about this, Nate, like nobody lines up 70% at one position in the NFL. You've got to like move between both sides of the field. So like, it's just like a muscle memory thing. And the games that I have on Jack Bech so far, I don't have the full profile done, but he's over 70% at right outside receiver. Now he does kick into the slot at times, but you get this a lot with these like Big 12 wide receivers and these simple offenses and things like that. So it's just it is one red flag to note in his profile. All that being said, I do think he beats man coverage well. He works really well underneath. He definitely does not stack and win on go routes on the outside. I don't think he's a great straight line speed player, but good hands, really sneaks up on you after the catch, man. He rarely goes down on first contact, and he has some true like contact balance in the open field. So I like him a lot. I think he could be a guy that is a flanker slot type of player. But yeah, again, that one side of the field thing is probably the one biggest negative I have on him. But otherwise, I really like him, and I think if you took him in the second round, I wouldn't blink.
Who was the second name you listed? It was Kevin White and then Corey Coleman.
Yeah.
Former
Corey
Baylor
Coleman.
receiver. You know who Corey Coleman's offensive coordinator was at Baylor? Kendall Briles. You know who TCU's offensive coordinator is? Kendall Briles. So there you go.
Yeah. Keeping it in the Big 12 family there.
There it is. Yeah, those Briles offenses, they have fooled of many. They have tricked a lot of people. But Bech, I warmed up to him as I watched him. I felt like he earned more targets than he got. And this is a guy that got 1,000 yards this year. I was like, this guy is your best player. Feed him. Only had one drop this year, 1.1% drop rate. Only had 4 career drops on 200 targets.
Awesome
yes,
hands.
you mentioned it. Yeah, great hands and great body control. Body control was the biggest note I had from smooth, really good body control and strong. He plays strong ball with his route runner. You mentioned the man coverage stuff, but also with the ball in his hands. He bounces off tackles. It's kind of fun. He was a transfer from LSU. He led a receiving room as a true freshman, had multiple future first round picks on it. Another smooth athlete. I mentioned that, but he had good agility drills. Did not run the 40, which I know why. But yeah, I know why. But I think he could be a really good secondary target for somebody. Maybe a number like a high end 3 option, like if you had a receiver and a tight end or something like that, where he is, works with another guy because he just does a lot well. Good feel in zone, really good hands. I just love the ball skills. I already brought that up, but the ball contortion or body, how he can contort his body for the throws is really nice. And that's with so many teams playing zone, that's going to be really valuable with zone, especially when you have good hands, because quarterbacks are going to fire it into weird spots. You better come down with it. Those are the chances you get. I'm with you. I think another guy that I kind of have in that late second, early third round grade. So that's a guy that's a top 60 player, and that's probably where we're going to have him end up on my updated big board. But man, I just really grew on me, because it's just like every time good things happen when you targeted him.
Yeah.
And I like those types of players where it's like only good things happened. And when he got the ball, he wasn't dropping the ball. He was getting positive yards. He wasn't working backwards. He wasn't bobbling the ball ever. It was just like a nice steady player, but has some stuff to him. So I'm glad we got to talk about him a little bit, because I think he'll make a team happy. And I think a lot of teams do like him anyways, especially his Senior Bowl showing. About to take our next break, and then we'll come back with even more receiver prospects, because that's what we're doing on Football 301. All right, we are back, and we just left off with a receiver from Lafayette, Louisiana, and we're going to another receiver from Lafayette, Louisiana. I didn't know that until right now as I looked him up. Tre Harris, Ole Miss, part of the Lane Kiffin circus offense, highly productive. I'm actually curious how this this ends up in your evaluation. But Tre Harris, though, Matt, he came in at 6'2", 205, almost 32-inch arms at the combine, 4'5", 440. Had some good jumps, though, which kind of tracks. But what do you think of Harris, though, Matt?
Yeah, we go from prior to the break, the guy who led the team with Malik Neighbors in receptions in his first year with LSU there, and Jack Bech too. Malik Neighbors' college quarterback was Tre Harris. So right. A lot of Malik Neighbors connective tissue here. And it's funny too, thinking about going from Bech to Tre Harris is big time whiplash, because Jack Bech, like, he's effective, but he kind of looks a little goofy out there as a receiver. This is the dumbest take I have on any of these prospects, but I think Tre Harris just looks like an NFL receiver. Like even just at the snap, like he looks like an NFL receiver. Looks like an old school kind of classic volatile X that I do think teams have sort of moved away from this archetype, right? Like, a lot of these guys have become the sacrificial X receivers. Is a thing that I like to say about these guys. And I think Harris does profile kind of in the Alec Pierce-ish world of receiver prospects. You just look at obviously that role in the Ole Miss offense, which is, pretty Looney Tunes-ish, to use a Charles McDonald phrase. Interestingly, actually, he was used a little bit more in the slot in his in 2023, and like some of those games that I looked at, he was almost kind of used in the same way that Jonathan Mingo was, but for the most part, he was a pure perimeter X, and he's running goes, curls, and screens. 56% of the sampled routes I have for him were screen, curl, or 9 routes. So this isn't really all that out of the ordinary for collegiate receivers, especially kind of goofy ones like the Lane Kiffin offense operates. I understand that some people said this about Brian Thomas last year. Ooh, limited route tree. Like, number one, that wasn't a major sticking point for me with Brian Thomas. Number two, Thomas showed an excellent ability to win across the route tree. I think Harris is a little bit more straight line. I mean, he primarily wins on 9 routes. He wins on curl routes. He wins on slant routes. And like, he does really win at a high level on those patterns. And I think he's got like flashes and sort of the very beginnings of solid route running against man coverage, particularly on those routes. It's still a limited application player. I actually had a pretty devastating comparison for him that I don't like. I'm not saying his career is going to turn out to be this player, because I also, by the way, didn't think that this player was going to turn out to be, I hate to be mean, but like completely useless in the NFL. A lot of his reception perception metrics line up pretty similarly to Terrace Marshall coming out of LSU. I mean, like actually scary similar.
They're built exactly the same too, aren't they?
Built exactly the same. Really good success rate versus man and press numbers. Not good against zone, and only really effect. Now Harris is a little bit more effective on like curls, actually a lot more effective on curls. I think he actually stops down really well, drops his weight, and works back to the quarterback well. But Marshall was only go routes and slant routes, and that was it. And so it was weird to see like the good cumulative numbers, but when you parse it out by route, it wasn't that good. Harris is, again, he's like a bit better version of that. And I still think I would take this guy in early round 2, because I do think, like, okay, worst case scenario. Well, I guess worst case scenario, you get Terrace Marshall, and Terrace Marshall actually has the second lowest success rate versus man coverage score I've ever charted. But putting put that aside for a second.
If that's the floor.
Well, at least it's not Justin Hunter. Anyways, no, but like, I think worst-ish case scenario, you get Alec Pierce. Okay, that's fine. Like, he's useful in certain. You like Alec Pierce. We kind of been quiet Pierce bros at times. I've had a bit of a volatile journey with Pierce, but whatever. So okay, you could get Alec Pierce.
To have a dynasty leagues, by the way, as like a flex dart throw or spike week guy.
Sometimes you get 2 points, and sometimes you get 29 points. It's what could be more predictable than that? So I think, like, you could get that player. But I do think there's when this archetype hits, if it really hits, it can hit big. Yeah. So I don't mind taking a swing on him if you need an X receiver in the early second round.
You did a great job encapsulating him. It's the route tree is what I come back to, is that's why there's receivers are just so talented now. Their floor is so high as far as the craft. Yeah. We think of just quarterback clinics and quarterback camps and all that. It's every position is getting camps now. Wait till you see some of these tackles that are entering college. There's this kid that's the number one tackle in the country. He's looks like he's 22 already. But these guys, he's a converted quarterback from high school, which is common. But he plays like a converted quarterback, and I mean that in the sense that I like some of the ball skills. I like some things that he shows, but then also his route tree is so limited. It's like the British royal family. Like just a very narrow route tree.
Straight line, baby.
A straight line. And there's not a lot of branches coming off that route tree. But that's to be expected. I think he's a little rawer, but he's not an overall raw player. So it's hard to kind of talk about him. It's got that Ole Miss offense. And it's just that I like some of the flashes I see, and what I picture his role. You just mentioned Alec Pierce. I want him to, and I hate to sound like an old scout, I wish he could just time like that. If he just went out there and ran that 4.44, I'd be like, oh, yeah,
sure.
Bomb. Okay, I know what you are. But these types, it could go any which way. And that's why I think if he goes to that right landing spot, he's going to be a good secondary receiver for you. Like you say, he's an intermediate deep guy. You expand his route tree. To me, I'd take him in round 3. I'm a little lower than you, I would say. But, man, I don't know. There's maybe some Demarcus Robinson here. That's a guy that's who came to mind, and maybe that role was kind of the middle ground for him. You know what Demarcus Robinson has become in the league, but just kind of that's the middle ground. Projection for him. If Marshall is the bottom, but I when you said Marshall, my brain went boop, and I was like, that's who he moves like. That it was like that, yeah. But I like Harris better than I was so low on Marshall. So I like Harris better than that, but that's a perfect little thing. But there's a lot of projection I think needed with him. But there are some cool flashes because of his size, his speed, and I mean the underlying numbers are bonkers because again, what you're going to see in that Ole Miss offense, and so he's productive as well. Yeah, just Terrace Marshall. That's always what you want to get compared to. We're going to move on to Jalen Royals, Utah State. Another player I'm actually curious what you think about. Of course, that's why I have you on the show. That's consensus 72 on the Athletics big board. Came out 6 feet, 205 pounds, 4.4, 240. Ran a 1.49 10-yard split, which is really cool. Also thought it was pretty funny that he came out and did the bench and he did 13 reps. I don't know. I just thought that was a funny thing that he just was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And he just puts up like average numbers. It's like, all right, thanks. Thanks for playing. Thanks for doing it. Missed a chunk of the season with a foot injury. What'd you think of Royals though? I know he does have a lot of fans in the league and I think in the media space as well. Kind of a fun day 2 guy to talk about, but what'd you think of Royals?
Another one of these guys that only lines up on one side of the field. So let's get that out of the way. And he comes, obviously not high level of competition, everything like that. He's got a lot of juice. He's got a lot of speed. And I think he separates pretty well, like just in isolated routes against man coverage on especially slants. I mean, he cuts up a lot of probably bad DBs on slants, but he can also stack well on the outside, I thought. And this is another offense that's not that fun to watch, by the way, Utah State over there. So, gets a lot of screens. I actually think he was pretty productive as a screen player. He went down on first contact on just 40% of the in-space attempts I charted for him. So again, there's speed there. There's athleticism there. I think he's a pretty raw player. And I didn't love some of the play like at the catch point in tight coverage. So I thought he was okay. Like I'm not super bullish on him, but I'm not out on him either. I thought he was I could see him being
72% on the Rotten Tomato score, Rotten Tomato score, something like that.
Yeah, like I'd watch it again, if it's on the plane, I'd check it out. Like hey, I can't watch my movies on my, which by the way, why are you going to put the laptop away in the plane, huh? The producers are definitely loving that. I'm gonna want to go down a laptop rant on the like hour whatever we're on this show right now. So I won't. Yeah. So, anyways, I won't do just full Jerry Seinfeld stuff here, but I'd watch it. Like I got to put my laptop away. It's playing on the little in seat movie thing. I'd watch the Jalen Royals show, but I don't know that I'm like queuing it up every Saturday night or anything like that. So I liked him. Good player, but not somebody that like I'm open to him is what I guess I would say.
There you go. Yeah. I another guy that I put in probably the round 3 conversation as well.
That's fair.
Remind you a little bit of Khalil Shakir, maybe. They're kind of built the same. He's a little bit.
Yeah.
They have the same 10-yard split. Yeah.
Interesting. I thought Shakir was so much more like rugged, which is what I loved about him. I thought he had great contact balance. He just was able to like shuffle through multiple moves where I think like Royals. Yeah, he still does. Like I thought Royals is more of like a speed merchant type.
Yeah.
And probably somebody I wanted. Maybe he could be like a speed slot receiver. But I kind of would rather see him like kind of on the perimeter a little bit. So I don't know. I also better zone. Khalil Shakir was a great zone beater in reception perception as a prospect. And like I think Royals is better in like these isolated man-to-man routes, which also makes him kind of a weird player, by the way. A little bit like, I don't know that I love this comparison, but Pop Douglas is this guy for the Patriots where he's a better man coverage route runner, but he's a slot player. So it just kind of makes him like a weird fit.
Yeah, and Rose had a lot of time outside, like you mentioned, is on one side. And God, I went back and forth with him. And so I've kind of been comfortable, like, I'll keep you on round 3. Because I liked his body control. Like that's what really showed up, but his route running wasn't great. And he really rounded on breaks, like curl routes and stuff, which is breaking routes is where you see detail. And so like a curl route, if a guy's really loose, okay, we got to work on that because it's a non-starter in the NFL. Like now, because you won't start, but also we need to work on that because you need to be tight on those because quarterbacks are throwing it to a spot. But yeah, it makes sense. Again, got to bring the caveat, a little bit of his background. He was a Georgia Military College to start, goes to Utah State, not a high level, sorry Aggies. But it's just not a high level where you're getting maybe well-rounded coaching, well-rounded teaching. So if you are bullish on him, you're saying, oh, he's ascending. I just like how his body control, how he contorts his body. That's why I just kind of kept coming back to what I did like positives of him, but I couldn't figure out what to do with him. Like, are you a slot guy?
Yeah.
Okay. But you're more finessey and explosive. You're not really like, just like you said, rugged. That's not how you win. Not saying he's soft or anything, but it's just not how he wins. So I kind of just like, I like him. I think he's an auxiliary target type of guy, but you got to refine his parts to really get the most out of him. Most of you guys do once we're talking these day 2 guys, but he's more of an idea right now than really a fully fleshed kind of contributor, I think. So I don't know. I like the body control, I like some of the athleticism. All right, moving on. This guy's a big receiver, kind of some people all over the place, but guy I was pretty high on going into the year. I kind of feel pretty good about where I'm at now. That's Elic Ayomanor from Stanford, 75th on the consensus board. He'll be in my top 75 as well. Maybe even a little maybe, I don't know. Yeah, top 75, that's fair. You had a recent tweet, though, that I thought was very apt for this player, and that was, this just feels like a Packers wide receiver. So, Matt, why did you tweet that?
Size, good blocker,
6'2", 206. Yep.
Some interesting route running, can't catch. Like that's a Packers receiver.
The drops is where it came from.
Packers receiver. I don't know why now I can't get it out of my head because I actually kind of think he compares pretty well to Romeo Doubs. And Doubs is like I don't know. I went on quite a journey with Ayomanor. Like he was a guy that was. I liked, again, he's a good man coverage beater. He's over 70% man coverage, which, by the way, like if you're an outside receiver, you're over 70% versus man. Like I'm interested. Okay. To some degree, I am interested, especially once you do it in the NFL, then it's like, we're going to hold this guy into like a pretty good esteem. And like, we want to see him in the right situation. As a prospect, it's obviously a little different. There've been guys, I mean, he kind of has like a bit of a similar profile to like Michael Wilson, who was drafted by the Cardinals in the 3rd round. I think was probably more of like a high 4th.
Looking at my notes.
So funny. Yeah, he's very similar
to another Stanford receiver, but he has some similarities to Michael Wilson.
Dude, I actually forgot that Michael Wilson went to Stanford, so I didn't even realize I was helmet scouting there. But yeah, that's right. He's a Stanford receiver as well. But I thought Wilson had much better hands to me, like in contested situations. I think Elic is. It's so weird because I think he's got good positioning and he generally has like good timing at the catch point, but he just loses the ball like going to the ground. I don't know if it's like a focus issue or he just doesn't have the strongest hands in the world. I think he doesn't have the strongest hands in the world because he drops passes. He's the other end of like where we talked about, guys that sometimes drop the easy ones and then make the hard ones. He didn't do either one of them. He drops some easy ones and he loses in contested situations. But again, he has some makings of good, solid route running, but I think he struggles against press because I don't think he has a lot of like burst. So again, very similar to like, are you an X or are you just more of a possession perimeter receiver, which is where I think Romeo Doubs, that comparison comes into me because just a good, solid starting outside receiver that like, again, we're not embarrassed because we're playing Romeo Doubs. And he was at times a really good player for the Packers last year and has actually been an ascending player in his NFL career, but at times has struggled with drops. And like I said, is just kind of a mid-level starting possession receiver. I think ceiling wise, that's the best case scenario for this guy. So I've come down a little bit lower on him.
Yeah. I kind of just am trying to figure him out because it's, like you just mentioned the man coverage stuff. And that was actually where I'm actually a little concerned with him is because it's that he's not a very sudden player. It's there's a little bits of explosion, especially as a blocker. I'll start with his top strength, which he's an awesome blocker, competitive blocker, smart player. You can tell all these things. It's just that he is not quick twitch. And even when he high points the ball, it's gather and then get up. And I know I sound like I'm splitting hairs, but I'm just trying to show the indicators of kind of athleticism, especially for a big guy. He timed well. He ran a 4.44, but if I were to estimate it, like where I was like, what this guy ran like before the combine, I would be like, he's a 4.54 guy, like that. And I know that's not fair because he actually went out and ran well. But that's how he kind of just plays. It's just not that easy explosive ability. Having said all that, I do like him. I really do. I just think that he is a useful player. As a blocker, I don't think he'll ascend to a number 1. I don't think he's a sneaky Puka Nacua candidate or anything like that. I just think that, he's a guy that I could see him being to bring up the Michael Wilson comparison again, but a number 3 in an offense, not your number 3 receiver. He can be your number 2, like your Z, but he has to be your number 3 target getter after Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride. That is how it is for the Cardinals. Now I was talking about, Elic with a Cardinal, he was in this really rough offense too. Like multiple quarterbacks played there. They couldn't block at all. And he was just competitive as all get out, which that's going to earn, some brownie points to me that your guys are down by 20 or 30. And there you are trying to pancake a guy out of bounds and you're trying to high point a dunk. I just kind of like that. It's not performative. Like he has potential to me as a power slot. Because of some of that, because also maybe it would hide maybe what I think might be some of his blemishes. But again, we have to see how he is in the NFL, which is, I think maybe some tighter man coverage will get him. I agree with you. The drop stuff is a little disappointing, especially for a big guy. You want these guys to be snatching that football. And he has he has big hands. He has 10-inch hands. But he had 7 drops this year. He had 6 drops last year. That's a thing. So I'm with you that there's a comparison for the Packers receiver, which I thought was so funny that you brought that up because I thought of the drops right away too. But I liked him a little more than you. But I do think that his ceiling is pretty capped. I think that I know kind of what this guy is as a useful Z that can do a lot of dirty work stuff, do some stuff on the move, like crossing routes where you use some build up speed, over routes and all that. I just think he's not for everybody, but he has a role for some people. And maybe kind of be that nice dirty work Z like Wilson has become for the Cardinals. You know what, like Wilson does, like we've complimented him on this. You mentioned as a rookie year, he had to play X. And you're like, he actually did okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what I think Elic can do for an offense. Oh, you can play a little X. You can play a little Z. You can play a little power slot. Yeah, he's decent at all of that. Not overwhelming, but decent. He's not embarrassing. That's kind of what I think his upside is. Just that kind of like contributor to an offense. Yeah. So late second, early third. That's where I see him as for me. Get to the other Iowa State receiver here. The one, already mentioned him. I like him a little more than his teammate. That's Jalen. You nodded, which also makes me feel better. Jalen Noel, not Noel. Noel from Iowa State. Have that confirmed now. He is the consensus 76th player on the big board, the consensus big board. He was in my top 50, though. He just snuck in there. I think he was 50 on my last run, or 49, somewhere around there. I think I'll hang about the same when I update it. So what'd you think of Noel, though? Because I another player we have not really indicated anything. So I was glad to see you nod your head a little bit when I mentioned his name.
Dude, I like him way better than a bunch of the guys we've already talked about.
I do too.
And
I do too.
I'll get right away into, because when I saw that, I didn't look at the consensus board, but I saw you had written down here he's 76 on the consensus board. I was like,
shocked me.
Dog, what are we doing here? By the way, you know who I compare him to based on his reception perception profile is Josh Downs, who went 79th overall and has way outplayed. Too. Yeah, that's my freaking guy. I had Josh Downs that year that he was drafted in tier 3 of my I had him in tier 3 of my overall rankings, same tier as Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, and ahead of Quentin Johnston, like all those guys that that in that same class. Yeah. And that's the group where I'm going to have Jalen Noel. I'm going to have him slotted in there as well. I really like him. I'm a huge fan. He gets open. He beats man. He's not just like a little pop gun slot receiver. I actually think he's not that good after the catch. He's probably the worst like tackle breaker that I've charted this year. But okay, great. Sorry, you can't throw him the little 3-yard pass and he breaks a few tackles to get you 7 yards. You know what he does? He goes out and you do 15 yards because he can run a dig. He can run out in the intermediate area. He's also a great contested catch receiver, just like Josh Downs was. And he's bigger. He's actually bigger than Downs, about 15 pounds bigger than Downs, maybe even more than that. So, I'm a huge fan. Jalen Noel, I think, in terms of like upside for these guys, I'm always going to like these guys more than consensus, the Downses, the Noels and everything like that. I'm a big fan of his game. Give me him ahead of a bunch of the dudes we've talked about here. I'm a huge fan.
Like I mentioned, he was a top 50 player for me. He's staying there. I like him better than Elic. I like him better than Royals. I like him better than Harris. I like him better than Jack. I like him better than Higgins, his teammate. I have him closer to Burden. I really dig Noel's game. Wow. If I were adventurous, I'd have him ahead of him. Who knows? I got a couple more days. I got 48 hours to decide that. You mentioned he is tiny. The biggest negative, he has short arms, little 29.5-inch T-Rex arms. But at the catch point, the dude, like his adjustment, and he was like an outfielder. He can go up and get it. He can high point it at the wall, he can fight through contact. He's freaking strong. I mean, he blew up the combine and it matches 5'10", 194. So he's near that baseline for me. So I'm like, okay, we're cooking here. 4.39 40, 41.5-inch vert, 11.2 broad. That means you're an explosive little pocket hamster. 6.82 combine or 3 cone. I'm sorry, 23 reps on the bench. So again, those short arms help. I have long arms. Yeah, you can't tell. That's how I know this. But he's a guy that my upside comparison to him is, what if Christian Kirk could block? That's Jalen Noel.
Yeah.
That's what intermediate vertical slot guy, but can block and do the dirty work. So you don't have the limitations that Christian Kirk presents to your offense. That is what I think he is. He's just an easy moving athlete. I just explosive as far as as he's at the catch coming out of routes. He creates that separation out of routes because he has that little pop out of his brakes. So yeah, I'm glad you're high on him because I'm super high on him. I think he's useful. I think he's explosive. I think this is the type of secondary receiver you want in your offense, even if I think he is limited to the slot. I just think that he's worth it because he can do other stuff. And it's not just some slot Wendell Robinson, guy that's like, no, you have to play here and you only can do these certain things. I think he brings so much to him. So yeah, sweet. That made me feel that was worth the whole show. Yeah, I watched him a few weeks ago. I tipped him off on where we did the little painting for prospects, but I was like, man, I just dig him. I watched 2 more games on him. It's like, yeah, I'd like him better than Higgins, which again, going into this process,
significantly
not what I thought I would end up on. So it just speaks to what Noel brings to the table.
I'm not shocked that I like him better than Higgins. That's actually not shocking for me. But just last on him, 74.1% success rate versus man, which is again better than a lot of the guys that we've talked about so far. And that's in the same neighborhood as like Ladd McConkey, Ricky Pearsall last year. And I think he's going to go way later than where those guys went, and he should go closer to that range. I'm a very big fan.
Sweet. That's awesome. We got football 301 stamp. Jalen, Noel. I love the player comparisons you throw out because it's just a bunch of guys where we're just like, oh yeah, Ladd, hell yeah. Downs, yeah, let's do it. This is exactly who I want to hear. Yeah, these are the comparisons. I don't want Marshall.
Not Terrace Marshall.
No, I don't want that as a player comparison. All right, we got a couple more that are still in the top 100 here. We'll go quick. Isaiah Bond from Texas, number 89 at the consensus board, promised that he would break his teammates' 40 time, came nowhere close to it, still ran fast. Isaiah Bond, though, what were some of your thoughts on him, Matt?
Yeah, I'm a little mixed on Bond. I think he plays fast. I don't know what he runs, I mean, you don't run, I know what he runs, but I know he didn't run like he wanted to run, but he plays really fast. I think you really feel how fast he is when you watch him play. Like he can get on top of guys in a hurry. He can get into his routes very quickly. But I think bigger defenders give him issues. I'm still kind of like working on him overall. I think he will be, if he's dialed in, another guy that doesn't have great character reports and stuff like that from what you hear from people.
Will get to that.
But yeah, if he's dialed in, I think he actually can be very tactically valuable to a team because the speed is there. He wins on some outbreaking routes that can create some real mismatches. Another guy that like, if he was in the Tutu Atwell role in the Rams offense, like I think we'd be maximizing that role maybe a little bit more than Tutu Atwell is, because I think he tracks the ball well and things like that. But a guy that I'm a little mixed on.
I'm mixed on him too, and it's kind of one of those guys when I come mixed on, it's like, all right, what else do I hear about him? Like these are the tiebreakers, and then you hear about Bond's character, and teams are just saying like, no thanks, hard out on him. Which is not what you want to hear. Not even just like, oh yeah, he's got some stuff. And I can't confirm anything. Like that's why I don't want to bring up individual examples, but it's just kind of one of those things where it's like teams do not approve of the character evaluation, which should also mean he might drop where he's at 89 consensus board. I would bet the under on that as far as, or after that, I should say, they would go after 89 because of that. And there's so many other guys that we think are in this tier, not just us. I think the collective evaluators as well. And we're going to talk about a couple more that teams are going to dig that, especially what happened with Burton last year going with the Bengals. Yeah. And people were saying they're comparing those two situations. So
and Burton was much better. Burton was much better, in my opinion. It was a much better prospect than Bond is.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, just get yourself Jalen Noel. It's a good blocker too. Come on, man. That's why I'm saying Christian Kirk with the blocking. Like he's a good blocker. I love him. Keep talking about him. Go with the last guy here on the consensus top 100. That is Xavier Restrepo from Miami. Cam Ward's favorite target. He is 90th on consensus board. He's had an eventful offseason. He was Tyler Van Dyke's favorite target. That's when I first learned about Xavier Restrepo. Good. He's one of those players. He truly is like a horseshoe up the ass kind of player, like just only lucky and good things happen when Xavier Restrepo gets a target. But then he goes and runs a 4.8 240 or something of that sort. It couldn't even get me to the Wes Welker range in the low 4.7s. But Restrepo, slot only, just kind of wins on his routes and comes down with it. But I'm curious actually what reception perception and Matt Harmon thought of Xavier Restrepo because he is a unique player.
Very unique player. I agree with you. Slot only, but very competitive. Little Jarvis Landry-ish, right? I think he's a zone beater. He actually even run. Yeah, right. Same 40 time. And by the way, he also did come out and say, what did he pulled a hamstring or something of that nature? He had a an injury thing ready to roll right after, which what was just same with Landry. He also ran the 40 hurt. But he's even got that same like weird ass, like bent over kind of, like I want to give him a posture corrector, like, way of running routes that Landry did too, where it's just like, maybe, I don't know. It's a weird watch, but again, good zone beater, smart player, settles well, pretty competitive after the catch, although I don't know that he necessarily is going to be like an after catch player in the NFL, but good hands, good zone beater. I wouldn't mind him, in early day 3 or something like that, even though the 40 time is atrocious.
Yeah, that late 3rd, early 4th. That's my grade on him. That's probably where he'll end up going. The Jarvis Landry's 40 at the combine. I was in the stands where the scouts were timing the 40s, and actually, I think the guy's a GM now that said this, but the scout behind me was timing the 40, and okay, everyone timed. Okay, and then all right, next they make the announcement. Jarvis Landry will not be running the next 40. Due to a pulled, and all you can hear is like, rah, rah, rah. And then another scout goes, pulled what? And the scout behind me goes, pulled his pride.
Yeah.
ran a 4.78 or whatever he ran, pulled his pride. Who cares about the hamstring? That's what he pulled.
Yeah, for real.
But it kind of fell about that. But yeah, no, that's a good little comparison. Slot, kind of like little maneuverability, kind of comes down with every ball. I really liked Restrepo, but I'm realistic about what he is. But if he ends up being that annoying slot guy for some team that just earns a bunch of first downs for 8 years, wouldn't be shocked. But again, you just got to be realistic about what he can do. He can't play on the outside. Don't think it's a possibility, especially at the NFL. No. So you're limited there. Got to learn how to do dirty work stuff. And are you worth it? So I think he ends up going around 4-ish. But no, I tweeted this multiple times the last couple of years is only good things happen when you throw the ball to Xavier Restrepo. And everyone could use an Xavier Restrepo because just good stuff happened. But yeah, just have to be realistic what he is. All right. Those are top 100 players, at least on the Athletics consensus board. We're going to wrap this show up, this doozy. We're pushing it 100 minutes here. We're pushing it. Maybe some guys we want to highlight outside the top 100. I'm going to give you the floor because I believe there is one that you really wanted to, put a little highlight on here.
Yeah, I will say just before we do kind of the grab bag, I think Kyle Williams deserves to be in like the top 100 as well. I don't know where you are with him.
About here. Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's going to be top 60, I think, for me. Once it's all said and done. Yeah, I really like him, but he was going to be one of the guys I brought up. So
yeah, I really like him as well. I liked him a lot better in 2024 than 2023, just because I thought he was so much more decisive and aggressive as a route runner. I think he, number one, I should say, one of these guys that lines up on one side of the field. So again, let's get that kind of out of the way. But I don't think he's a slot only player despite the size. Now he gets a little bit overwhelmed to me on vertical routes, but I mean, he is just devastating against man coverage on like base routes, slants, curls, things like that. I mean, he could pile up a lot of production and be a very reliable target. I'm still kind of working on my final thoughts on him, but there's a little bit of like Diggs stuff to his game, smaller guy, but and Diggs is bigger than Kyle Williams, but he can get open and like everything that you kind of want to see from this archetype of receiver. Good release package, faced a lot of press coverage in the games I sampled and handled it pretty well too. So there's some big Kyle Williams fans out there. I'm not quite there, but I really like him as a day 2 guy.
Yeah, no, I really like him. I remember him at UNLV here. He was like worth a ticket. Just explosive as all get out. And it's like what I said earlier, like that's the name of the game. Can you create explosive plays? And he can. He's dynamic. Underneath screen stuff, yak stuff. I agree with you. Their route running could be a little. It was a little loose sometimes, but I actually didn't. Overall, I thought he was okay. It wasn't a concern for me at all. And his yard after catch ability, it's a sliding scale. Not the greatest route, but you got the ball in your hands and that you made 2 guys miss. Okay, well, we'll let it slide. He just, like, my line on him, my first line is he just makes it happen. Like, that's just one of these guys. He just makes plays happen. He's great at tracking the football deep. He's great with the ball in his hands. Can have some double catches. I thought, sometimes, but just when he played, when he was on the field, he looked like the NFL player. Like he is just faster than everybody, moves quicker than everybody. He's been like that since his first school. And just has a knack for contorting his body as well. So like I said, maybe not make top 50, but top 60, he's easily making, because I just think I like him a bunch above a bunch of other guys that we talked about as well. So that's why I'm glad we got to highlight him here. Because like you said, I'm not like saying top 3, top 4 guy, he goes in the first round, but in the second round, I'm totally comfortable with Kyle Williams. I just think he is that dynamic, and that's what you're chasing at the position. Not you want the easy polished guys, but you also want the dynamic guys as well. I'll throw up my guy here. That's Torrey Horton from Colorado State, who in 2023 had a phenomenal game against Colorado, which I think the whole nation was watching. Battled some injuries in 2024, came back and ran the 40, and had a good time too. I really like Horton. He is, to me, he's long-legged. Again, didn't play the full season, but he's an easy mover for long-legged. He's not very rigid. Like can actually sink a little bit. Like his underneath routes, like he knows how to use his length too as a catcher, as a receiver too. Like he eats up the ground and he'll extend for some throws. I just really like this guy, and I think he's an ascending player. I wish he was healthy this year, because I just think he's a good possession receiver that has some explosive play ability. Can take that drag route, that crosser route, and take it 20 yards, 25 yards, and just has some polish to him too. Didn't get to see a ton of it again this year, and it's a very wide open pass heavy offense. Of course, it's traditional air raid stuff. But I got to see a lot of the route tree, and he's good at it. And I think he's just got some real juice to him. He moves like he's not. This guy was such a unique guy, but Devontae Smith, Devontae's long-legged, even though he's really skinny. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's why he's like a fashion model already. But I think Horton kind of moves like that, where he's long-legged, but he's not stiff. Like he's not stiff-hipped. Like it's just that he eats up ground with his strides, and he's able to kind of like just move easily with that. But I don't know. I've been trying to figure out who he moves like, but I like Horton a lot. He's going to make my top 75. I'll tell you that. And I just think he's a guy that can. I wish he was healthy this year, because I think he'd have even more fans. But I just really like him. I think he's a good player, and I kind of put you a little homework assignment on him. So I was curious what you think.
Yeah, I was going to throw out you remember Tyrell Williams, the Chargers receiver? Mm-hmm. He kind of reminded me of him a little bit, like bigger, longer, lankier, skinny X type.
Like Western Oregon. Something
like that. I don't know, but he had a season of 1,000 yards in the NFL, because he was just Al Zeidenfeld. He used to do stuff with DraftKings, a lot of daily fantasy, ESPN stuff. He called him the Gazelle, because he would get in the open field and just have those like long strides and like I don't know how fast he's moving, but he's moving. That's sort of what Torrey Horton and he was good on those little quick inbreakers, slants and things like that, man. So and he's again, if he can stack and get open down the field too. So I hadn't charted him until you put me to work, because I was just sitting around here waiting for assignments. I
don't have enough on your plate. I don't
got anything else going on. But yeah, so after getting my homework assignment from Nate Tice, I did put in a couple of games, and I liked him, so I'm gonna probably, if not get a full profile up on him, at least have him in my prospect roundup sample. One other guy that's going to be in that I wanted to highlight before we get out here, Andrew Armstrong from Arkansas. He's got a teammate too, Tesla, that I think is a little interesting as well. But Armstrong's an older prospect, kind of a weird. He's like he played all the way back in like the COVID season, so he's an older guy. But out of Arkansas, he has all the measurables. I thought he kind of. I don't know. He's definitely not like Bud Light Brandon Ayuk, but maybe he's like Miller High Life Brandon Ayuk, or like a 40 Brandon Ayuk, Steel Reserve Brandon Ayuk. I don't know, Mickey's a malt liquor Brandon Ayuk, just in the way that like, wow, dude, come on, don't be disrespectful to Bud Light, but Busch Light like that. I mean, give me a break. You're a Midwestern guy, Nate. Come on. But no, Armstrong, I thought actually got into it. He got into his routes well. He works well after the catch, and he extends at the catch point. Like, he uses his wingspan, and he has a pretty big wingspan to his advantage, but he's very raw as a route runner. He's very developmental, but he is a guy that I would want to take on day 3 and be like, hey, can our receiver coach get you to kind of stride it out a little more? Because he's got these like little choppy steps in his routes that I don't like. He like a short strider in his route, but a long strider after the catch. So I want to see if we can balance that out a little bit, but a decent day 3 developmental guy.
There are Arkansas's quarterback's interesting too. Taylor Green, big long-legged guy. Speaking of long legs, a lot of long legs as we end with Armstrong. Ha 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 ha. But also, I just looked it up. Torrey Horton, 6'2.5", 196, 4'4", 140, 153 split, 10-yard split. Tyrell Williams, 6'3", 204. He had 4'4", 340 and a 151 split.
Yeah,
actually a little better, 10-yard. Yeah, but no, actually, that was a really good comparison. I like that a lot. As soon as you said it, my head went boop. Yeah, I just thought of him. That's yes. And then the Raiders paid for him. Yeah, that didn't end up great, but the
classic
show, Raiders. This show ended up great though. That was fun. 100 minutes of wide receivers, no producer heart attacks. It was good. It was maybe half
that we know of.
That we know of. Yeah, we'll see. Let's see if we got the alert from Stone. But no, we're closing it out today. Thank you so much to Matt. But we'll be back Thursday with Charles. We're going to have a big board off. Compare our top 75s, any discrepancies, any differences, anything we agreed on, anything we think is spicy. I'm curious what Chuck has updated because I know I have some thoughts. But Matt, thank you so much for joining me. Everyone can find his stuff at Matt Harmon _BYB on Twitter and now Blue Sky. Now, actually, when I tag you, you respond to it on there. So that's always great. I was tagging you with shows to just air for a while, but great to see you on there. Oops. But Matt, what are you working on? Because I know you have 500 million things you're working on, but highlight some of the stuff that you're doing for Yahoo and Reception Perception.
Yeah, trying to pump out as many of these profiles on receptionperception.com. All the guys we've talked about today will, if they're not all up on the site, but they will be by draft day, dropping new profiles every single week leading up to the NFL draft. And then, just put out an episode of Mock Draft Monday with some guy, Daniel Jeremiah, was kind enough to come join the plebes on Mock Draft Monday. So some good receiver talk there as well. We talked Matthew Golden and a lot of different things, so people can check that out as well.
I'm actually going to check that out as I do my mock draft. So I'm actually excited about that because DJ is great. No, but make sure you guys check out Matt's stuff, not only because if you're into fantasy, but even if into real football, and I'm not trying to knock fantasy, but just even into your real team and everything, it's so great. It applies to all that. It's just a great resource. Even before I worked with Matt, I looked at it, glanced at it, respected Matt's work. It's so much better to be a coworker with him and to be able to actually pick his brain about some of the stuff that he sees and charts because it's some of the best out there. Not just saying that because he's my bud, but because I believe that. And you should do it. Of course, dude. It's a lot. I know how much work you put into it and it shows. And it's really worthy of the praise, and you can tell how much work you put into it. So everyone make sure to check that out. I am Nate Tice. You can find me at Nate_Tice, Nate Tice on Blue Sky. I got a big board coming out, top 75. Make sure to check that out. Also send those questions to the mailbag. I promise we'll get to them next week. We'll have space. There's just been a lot of prospects. If you can't notice, we went 2 hours on D linemen, 2 hours on receivers. Talked to offensive linemen for like an hour and a half. Come on. But we'll get some of those mailbag questions soon. Football 301 mailbag at yahoosports.com, or you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us, follow us, rate us, watch us on YouTube on the Yahoo Sports YouTube channel. Subscribe to that as well. A lot of good stuff on there. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes. Thank you to everyone for listening. See you guys next time.